So we're going to start off today with just jumping right into Scripture. 1 Samuel chapter 1. We'll read all of 1 Samuel chapter 1. So it'll be up on the screen behind me. And if you want, you can turn there. 1 Samuel chapter 1. It's a long one, so you're going to have to bear with me here as we read this. There's lots of big names, so you're going to have to bear with me as I try to pretend I know the big names. There was a certain man of Ramathaim Zophim, of the hill country of Ephraim, whose name was Elkanah, the son of Jeroham, son of Elihu, son of Toha, son of Zuph, son of Ephraimite. He had two wives. The name of the one was Hannah, and the name of the other was Peninnah. And Peninnah had children, but Hannah had no children. Now, this man used to go up year by year from this city to worship and to sacrifice to the Lord of hosts at Shiloh, where the two sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, were priests of the Lord. On the day when Elkanah sacrificed, he would give portions to Peninnah, his wife, and to all her sons and daughters. But to Hannah he would give a double portion because he loved her, though the Lord had closed her womb. And her rival used to provoke her grievously, to irritate her, because the Lord had... And her rival used to provoke her grievously, to irritate her, because the Lord had closed her womb. So it went on year by year. As often as she went up to the house of the Lord, she used to provoke her. Therefore Hannah wept and would not eat. And then Elkanah and her husband and said to her, Hannah, why do you weep? And why do you not eat? And why is your heart sad? Am I not more than 10 sons? More to you than 10 sons? After they had eaten and drunk at Shiloh, Hannah rose. Now Eli the priest was sitting on the seat beside the doorpost of the temple of the Lord. She was deeply distressed and prayed to the Lord and wept bitterly. And she vowed a vow and said, O Lord of hosts, if you will indeed look on the affliction of your servant and remember me, and not forget your servant, but will give to your servant a son, then I will give him to the Lord all the days of his life, and no razor shall touch his head. And she continued praying before the Lord. Eli observed her mouth. As she continued praying before the Lord, Eli observed her mouth. Hannah was speaking in her heart, only her lips moved and her voice was not heard. Therefore Eli took her to be a drunken woman. And Eli said to her, How long will you go on being drunk? Put your wine away from you. But Hannah answered, No, my Lord, I am a woman troubled in spirit. I have drunk neither wine nor strong drink, but I have been pouring out my soul before the Lord. Do not regard your servant as a worthless woman, for all along I have been speaking out of my great anxiety and vexation. And Eli answered, Go in peace, and the God of Israel grant you your petition that you have made to him. And she said, Let your servant find favor in your eyes. Then the woman went her way and ate, and her face was no longer sad. They rose early in the morning and worshipped before the Lord. Then they went back to their house at Ramah. And Elkanah knew Hannah, his wife, and the Lord remembered her. And in due time Hannah conceived and bore a son, and she called his name Samuel, for she said, I have asked for him from the Lord. The man Elkanah and all his house went up to offer to the Lord the yearly sacrifice and pay his vow. But Hannah did not go up, for she said to her husband, As soon as the child is weaned, I will bring him, so that he may appear in the presence of the Lord and dwell there forever. Elkanah, her husband, said to her, Do what seems best to you. Wait until you have weaned him. Only may the Lord establish his word. So the woman remained and nursed her son until she weaned him. And when she had weaned him, she took him up with her, along with a 3-year-old ball, an ephah of flour, and a skin of wine. And she brought him to the house of the Lord at Shiloh. And the child was young. Then they slaughtered the bull, and they brought the child to Eli. And she said, O my Lord, as you live, my Lord, I am the woman who is standing here in your presence, praying to the Lord. For this child I prayed, and the Lord has granted me my petition, that I make to him. Therefore, I have lent him to the Lord. As long as he lives, he is lent to the Lord. And he worshipped the Lord there. So what kind of things does a mother generally fear for? What kind of things do you think a mother fears for most? What? Somebody said something. What kind of things do you think a mother fears for most? Welfare of her kids. That would be my guess, right? Number one on the list is probably their children, right? It's not that the father doesn't fear for the children as well, but the father's fear tends to manifest itself a little differently, right? Think about it. How many times does Dad say, "Don't tell your mother"? Because Mom wouldn't want you to do that, but Dad's going to do it with you. Mom says, "You can't use the monkey bars until you're a little older and a little taller." And Dad says, "I'll give you $1 if you jump off the top while doing a handstand." Maybe not that extreme, but you get my point, right? It manifests itself in a little different manner. Yes, my dad would do some things like that. We definitely would do things that my mom wouldn't necessarily approve of. And I definitely heard, "Don't tell your mom," more than a few times. Looking back at my childhood, I am sure that I can identify one of my mom's perpetual fears. One of the biggest fears she had concerning me. Hockey. I was, as most of you know, a huge hockey fan. And I played a lot of hockey. But that doesn't mean my mom was comfortable with it. Until I started playing hockey at 4 years old, I don't think my mom even knew hockey existed. So here's a picture. That's me early on when I was playing hockey. I was probably 5 or 6 there. Okay? You can understand when that little kid goes on the ice, why I should be a little worried, right? Okay? But when I started playing hockey, well, that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to play goalie. Hold up for a minute here. In other words, I wanted to stand in the net while 5 players with wooden sticks all tried to fire a 6-ounce vulcanized rubber hockey puck through me. I was determined. But you will notice in that picture that I am not wearing goalie gear. My mom made it very clear I was not allowed to play goalie until my head could touch the crossbar, the top bar of the net, which for me took a very long time because I was not very tall. As the next picture shows, it didn't take very long. I was playing goalie long before my head reached the crossbar, thanks to my dad. I used to fill in at goalie every now and again, and she was okay with filling in, but full-time? Not going to happen. But I was a lot better than the regular goalie was, and my dad was the coach of the team. So, you have to put the better goalie in, right? Well, my mom reluctantly gave in well before I could reach the crossbar, and I was, well, the shortest on the team. To this day, though, I hear the story about my first game as a regular goalie. My mom, still getting a little frustrated as she tells the story, she looks at my dad and goes, "What did you do?" Right? At some point in the game, they're coming in, they're trying to shoot this puck through me to score a goal, right? Kids fall down, right? They crash into me. I fell backwards into the net. They all got up. But I did not. I lay there motionless. I can't imagine what was going through my mom's head as she was going, "I knew he should have never played goalie," right? I laid there for a while until the referee came by. But the reason I laid there, now I didn't need to lay there motionless, but I don't know, I guess I was just, I don't know why I was laying there motionless, but I did. But when I got knocked back into the netting, what happened was the clip on the side of my helmet got tangled in the netting. So when I tried to get up, I was stuck. So instead of struggling to get free or saying something, I just laid there. My mom endured my goaltending for 12 more years, as pucks started to speed up to well over 90 miles per hour, and players began to get taller than 6'6" and broke 250 pounds. But deep down, I would imagine that hockey was never my mom's greatest fear for me. It was rather what would happen after hockey, after childhood. Would I succeed? Would I find a job, a wife, a family? Would I succumb to alcohol, drugs, violence? Would I maintain a faith in God or run in the other direction? This is inevitably every mother's fear, isn't it? Even long after they're grown, what will they become? Or sometimes, will they ever recover from what they've become? What about church? What about their children? Will they be taken care of? Will they learn responsibility? And on and on and on. Fear is always creeping up concerning our children. Both rational and irrational fear. With that in mind, think back to our reading from 1 Samuel 1. Hannah has been desperate for how long? A very, very long time, right? Her journey has been so hard. Through her tears, God heard her cry, and she now has a son. But what could Hannah's greatest fear possibly have been in that moment? Probably the same as every mother, right? Losing that son. In the face of that great fear, how could Hannah possibly do what she has just done? She took her son, long-awaited son, and she gave him to Eli to raise. She gave him to God. She handed over her long-desired son to God. He is yours, do with him as you will. What is Hannah thinking? Would any of us do that? Our children tend to be a touchy topic, for sure. But the emotional connection is so deep. Because the emotional connection is so deep. Not only do we many times watch them floundering, but we tell ourselves we're the reason they're floundering. Parents see themselves acted out in their children's mistakes, and they think, only if I had done better. Only if I had been better. Hannah came to the realization from the very beginning, the one that we must all come to. If Hannah wanted the best for her long-awaited only son, then her only option was to give him to God. God was the best thing for him. It wasn't so much that her son, it wasn't so much that it was even her son that she was sacrificing as it was she was sacrificing herself, her desires, her wants for the well-being of her child. As it says in Scripture, we must die to the flesh. We must die to ourselves. And then we must live to Christ. That means, and this is where the hard part comes, we must deny our own needs and desires for the sake of what is best for our children and for God. We must commit our children into the hands of God, knowing that He is able to provide much better than any other, even ourselves. I quote Edward Welch, and he says, "Can we say that we die to our children? Yes, in a sense, but it isn't exactly our children. We die to our notions that God doesn't care about them. We die to the fear that no one is in control. We die to our belief that God is not always good. We die to the grasping that says, my children are mine, and mine alone." This has got to be the hardest area to believe that God's promises come true when He says we can be free of fear. I mean, can we believe and accept that God promises that we can be free of fear, even fear for our children? How can a parent ever be free from the fear of their child, fear for their child? It might feel like it's impossible to conceive, but even in this, God promises us freedom from fear and anxiety. He once again says, same thing He's been saying all along, right? Do not fear. He promises us peace, even in this. God does not promise that in the end everything will work out for our children, because this is something that He cannot promise. Children will always be free to make their own choices, to choose God or to choose another way. But God does promise that in the midst of all their choices, He will always be there. He promises that no matter how far away they become, no matter what they get messed up in, no matter how great the fall, God will never be more than a breath away. He promises to be ever present and ever working. When we die to ourselves and we give our children over to God, we can have peace because God is always working. He's never content, and He's forever faithful. Look at some of the amazing conversion stories in Scripture. Notice how powerfully God works. But also notice that those who love the Lord are always pretty close to the story, giving their love, support, and grace in the midst of their failings, never abandoning, never giving up, never forsaking. Psalm 46, 1 through 3, it reads, God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore we will not fear, though the earth gives way, though the mountains be moved into the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam, though the mountains tremble at its swelling. Even when the earth gives way in the form of children falling away, God says we can have peace because He is our refuge and strength. He never gives up. He is faithfully working. He says we must die to self, recognizing that we do not know what's best for our own children. We must give them over to God, not when things have gone wrong, but like Hannah from the very beginning. We must find peace in the knowledge that there is none who can love or provide for them as well as God can. And then we must be an ever-present force of unconditional love and grace in their lives, never forsaking and never giving up on them. You'll notice as you read Scripture that God is always at His very best when things seem like they're at the very worst. There is no such thing as the last minute. There is only perfect timing. The greater the distress, the greater our God shows Himself to be. In closing today, mothers, take all of your fears, all of your anxieties, all of your worrying for your children, and hand it over to the God who provides. Today, celebrate with your family in peace and contentment. Let the joy of the Lord be your strength. And children, that's the rest of us, right? Children, let us celebrate our mothers today without giving them anything more to worry about. Let us reassure them that God is working in presence and that we are ever thankful for their sacrifice, their tears, their worries, and their anxieties. Let's today give them peace and rest and be a source of joy.